We'll continue our coverage now of our lead story this morning. The young woman at the center of a police sex scandal is heading back here to the Bay Area. Later this morning, Jasmine Abuslin's attorneys will hold a press conference in Oakland. So what kind of services will she need to help with her recovery? And what could this case do to victims in similar situations? Joining us now, we welcome back Sheri Shuster, human rights filmmaker and advocate, to Mornings on 2 the 9. Sheri, thanks for joining us. We have to first talk about the fact that we knew her as Celeste Guap. She's changed her name. Her appearance is somewhat more demure, if you will. How do you read what we heard and saw yesterday?
I'm very appreciative that some civil rights lawyers from the Bay Area have actually stepped up and gone to advocate on her behalf. I think it's tremendously important that there are, part of the reason why this has even happened is because there hasn't been any adults in her life that are really looking out for her to protect her, right? So when you think about it, like, she's been through, law enforcement, prosecutor's office, the media, and nobody has even stopped to refer her to the many anti-trafficking agencies in the Bay Area where she could get help. Like, I think at this point, I'm just grateful that she has some what seem to be very competent and compassionate civil rights lawyers who are going to be advocating on her behalf and hopefully getting her the help and support that she needs through organizations like Missy, Baywar, West Coast Children's Clinic, where they provide trauma-informed services for somebody who, like Celeste, who's been subject to countless forms of child abuse.
Her attorney said something yesterday that stood out during the news conference. She said, Celeste Guap is dead. Jasmine is glad to be free and wants to come home. Jasmine is going to get a second chance. Is Celeste Guap dead? I mean, how hard is that for an individual? I mean, she just,
I think
life just disappears, or right? I mean, as someone who's going to move on?
I wouldn't hold on. I mean, I think that's just a way of saying, like, they're ready to go move forward with the prosecution, and her name is going to come out anyway.
But part of the recovery process is Celeste Guap, as she, say, 5, 10 years from now, is always part of the individual as she recovers?
Yeah, I mean, if you're asking, does trauma linger? Like, yeah, absolutely. I don't even think this would be a question. If you look at, I think that sexual violence against girls and women is so pervasive that it becomes invisible, right? Like, if this were a boy who had been, sexually abused by police since the age of 12, and I don't know that this is very widespread information, but she has been initially trafficked starting at the age of 12.
Your attorney said
that.
Yes,
we're talking about a 7th grader, okay? So if this were a 7th grade boy, would we even be asking, like, 6 years later, 7 years later, like 8 years later, is he still going to be, like, the reality of the situation is the trauma hasn't ended, right? I mean, she's, up until very recently, she was still being, she was still a victim of sex trafficking with the police.
So, does it ever end?
Does it ever end? I don't know. I mean, think about the worst thing that's ever happened to you in your life, and think about, for most of us, right, like, in terms of trauma, like, the healing is a lifetime journey, right? And so she's just now beginning her journey, and hopefully will be getting the type of support and services and, human treatment that she deserves.
That's what I want to ask you. After all this is over and this case fades from the news, how is this woman's, now woman, formerly girl's life going to recover? Is there hope for her to have a normal life after all this fades and just go into a different life?
Well, I mean, I think a lot of that, depends on the type of love and care and compassion that she receives, right? I think thus far, it's just been added, insult to injury with the way that she's been treated, essentially like a disposable human being. I mean, even the way, frankly, the media has covered this, it's just been, you see pictures of the police officers who are involved in this. They look like they just dropped their kids off at soccer practice. You see pictures of Celeste Guap, who's a child who's been sexually abused and trafficked since the age of 12, and she's got blue eyeshadow and cleavage. Like, who?
Well,
like,
and I think
that's representation is very important. The way we frame the problem is oftentimes informs how we frame the solutions as well.
Well, I will say, we put what happened during the news conference up on our Facebook page. Well over 1,000 comments. I'd say about half of them say she is not a victim. She was chasing those police officers, and now all of a sudden she's turning around and saying, I was victimized. What do you say to those people who think she is not a victim?
I think that the level of brutality and inhumanity is pervasive, especially when it comes to sexual violence against women, because, you know, it happens so often, right? It's not just an issue in the Bay Area. It's not just an issue in California. Sexual violence against women is a global issue, and I feel like it's so ubiquitous in a way that it becomes normalized, and the brutality becomes invisible, essentially.
Jasmine's attorney also said that the 19-year-old wants to help other victims of sexual exploitation. The importance of having someone who's gone through it, helping others who are going through it. Is that a good thing for the person?
I think, you know, I'm in the midst of making a film about this, right? Still I Rise, which is a film about survivor leadership. And I absolutely think that people who have lived experience, whether that's in domestic violence, survivors of, you know, prostate cancer, whatever the situation is, if you have lived experience, you have a very particular, intimate type of knowledge, right, of that experience. So certainly I think that survivors should be at the forefront of the conversation, at the forefront of the leadership of the anti-trafficking movement. I don't think somebody who's literally like just, you know, a day away from it, you know, that the focus for, you know, her right now, and my hope for her is that she does get a referral to Missy and to West Coast Children's Clinic so she can start, you know, the very slow and deliberate process of healing by getting trauma-informed therapy and case management and help with her education and all of her sort of, you know, step-by-step, her basic needs met.
A long road, no doubt.
Absolutely.
Sheri Shuster, thank you so much for joining us again here on The Nine.